Good day, class, and welcome to this lecture of the Introduction to Criminal Justice course. I am Professor Darrell Ouellette, and this will be lecture number 4. Lecture number 4 is titled Policing in American Society. In this lecture, I will cover the following topics: crime control efforts, which include methods of police patrol. I'll be talking about the functions of the detectives in the detective division, plainclothes versus uniform, and I'll also lecture on first response to crime. The other major topic I'll talk about is who becomes a police officer and how. I'll talk about people's decisions to become police officers, the application process they must go through, the process of hiring, if they do get hired, their police academy training. And towards the end of the lecture, I'll also talk about women and minorities in policing. To go along with the theme of this course, again, I'm showing you the criminal justice funnel. And this lecture will primarily deal with the section under crimes reported. The first topic I'd like to talk about are police patrol functions. The cop on the beat has been and continues to be the mainstay of policing. The patrol function is so fundamental to law enforcement that the need for it seems beyond dispute. As both a concept and a technique, patrol remains basic to all but the most specialized police agencies, such as the FBI. The FBI, Federal DEA, ATF, these are specialized police agencies. They do not participate in a patrol function. When I say patrol function, I mean the uniformed officer out on the street, out on the highway, patrolling and looking for offenders, looking for suspicious activity. To many citizens, the ever-present force of officers that are dispersed throughout the community, they see them in uniform and armed. They see them on call 24 hours a day. That is policing. All other police activities are service functions seen by many people as necessary, but as secondary in importance to working the beat. This attitude is probably a bit extreme, yet there is some validity to it. The patrol officer is the generalist of law enforcement. He or she exercises a vast amount of police discretion and is the most visible embodiment of authority out there. They are the embodiment of law and order in our communities. And there is little doubt that the success or failure of law enforcement, no matter what test is applied, depends in great part on the quality of patrol officers and the ways in which they are used by their commanders. Patrol officers represent the full authority of police power, and are expected to perform all the functions involved in general law enforcement, as well as to achieve specific objectives set by their own departments. Patrol in all forms has three primary purposes. I've listed these for you: answering calls for assistance, maintaining a police presence in the community, probing suspicious circumstances, and I've added additional job descriptions, which I will list for you now. There are many job descriptions of a patrol officer. Of course, they're assigned to areas, and they maintain compliance of motor vehicle and criminal laws. Part of the job description is to answer emergency calls. They also issue citations and make arrests. They write detailed reports in any investigation they do, whether it be a criminal investigation or an accident investigation. Police officers are required to testify in court on their cases as a witness. They're required to do things like identify stolen vehicles for return to the owner. They investigate accidents and render first aid to the injured. They investigate abandoned or suspiciously parked cars. They check commercial vehicles to make sure they comply with state statutes. Police officers are trained to operate communication systems such as radios and computer terminals. They are trained to direct traffic and provide escorts. They are required to assist other agencies whenever they need assistance. Police officers present safety programs to civic organizations or in the school systems. They do a variety of things besides, of course, they're required to investigate committed crimes. So they do a variety of things, and I've listed 4 major categories here. The 3 most general ones, and then the 4th I've added a bunch of job descriptions for you. What else are the police expected to do? Well, every police department in America is faced with citizens' great expectations of the police, and regardless of the time of day, the weather, or the inconvenience, citizens expect police to respond to calls for assistance. Where are the police when you need them? That's often a question or statement that people make. People want immediate help when needed, but otherwise they are just happy not to see the police. If you ever experienced driving down the highway and all of a sudden see a police car in your rearview mirror following you, and that uneasy feeling that you may be doing something wrong or you're about to be stopped, it's a nervous feeling, and it's not something that people enjoy, and they'd rather not see the police unless they need them. There are some traditional expectations of the police. We expect them to prevent and control serious crime. That is, any conduct widely recognized as threatening our lives or property. So We expect them to do that, to control serious crime and to prevent serious crime in the first place. We expect police to assist and protect victims of crime, especially those in danger of physical harm. We expect police to protect constitutional guarantees, including those of free speech and assembly. We expect police to facilitate the movement of people and vehicles. We expect the police to assist the intoxicated, addicted, mentally ill, physically disabled, the old, the young, and others who cannot care for themselves. We expect police to resolve conflict between individuals, conflict between groups, and anyone in conflict with the government. We expect the police to resolve these conflicts, to step in. When you see a riot and you see police with riot helmets and sticks and vests and shields, when we're unable to resolve conflict, then we deal with the aftermath. We expect police to identify problems before they become more serious. Overall, we just want them to create and maintain a feeling of security in the community. I'd like to talk now about methods of police patrol. There are two general methods. There's a preventive patrol and a proactive patrol. And I'd like to talk about the difference between the two. In contrast to the village constable that I mentioned in an earlier lecture, the village constable who walked a beat and came to know the citizens of his small area, the typical patrol officer today covers a beat in a marked radio-equipped patrol car. Preventative patrol became a popular policing technique. That is, police officers just cruise around in a squad car throughout the community just to have an omnipresence deterrence to potential criminals. There was no specific pattern. They just rode around and let people see them. And the thought is that, if they're seen enough by the community, that criminals will stay out of that community. And that's basically the technique used by small town police departments, a continuous patrol, running around through town, letting people see you. Now, in contrast to proactive patrol, proactive patrol is following a specific pattern, and a specific pattern during a particular police patrol, and that pattern depends on a variety of factors. In some cases, the routes to be followed by the patrol cars may be prescribed by a patrol sergeant or patrol regulations, and then supervised by a sergeant. In this proactive pattern, police departments try to achieve the deterrent function of making the police presence known in an area being patrolled that is a trouble spot, an area that has higher crime than other areas of the community. An example of this would be when bars close. We all know that last call may be 12:30 1 o'clock in the morning. And so we know that about that time, a lot of people who have been in bars drinking will possibly walk out and get into their vehicles and drive off after having consumed more than the legal limit. This is proactive patrolling. You patrol an area of the city or the town where there are bars, and as a deterrent. And the same with school zones. We know that children are on the street in the early morning hours getting ready to go to school. And so you'll see patrol cars patrolling the streets where the schools are located during the hours when schools open and students are either walking to school or driving to school, trying to keep the speed limit down on the streets, having people see them. And they'll do the same thing at the end of the school day when schools are getting out. This is an example of proactive patrol. Preventative is more general, just being seen, riding around with no specific purpose, whereas proactive is a more specific purpose of patrolling to make your presence known in areas where there may be a problem. So in summary, preventative patrol, let me stop right there. Preventative patrol and preventive patrol, two words spelt differently but mean the same thing. You can call it either one. But preventative patrol is the frequent presence of police in specific areas in order to deter crime. No specific pattern, it's just being in specific areas frequently to deter crime. Proactive patrol is actively seeking out crime problems before they occur. And again, I gave you the example of police hanging out in a neighborhood where there are bars and the closing of a bar at the end of the evening, or proactively patrolling the streets where schools are located in the morning and also in the afternoon when schools come in the morning, when they're released in the afternoon. And also proactive could be patrolling specific neighborhoods where you've had a rash of burglaries recently during specific times. That would be another example. You're actively seeking out crime problems before they occur. If uniformed patrol officers are the frontline troops of law enforcement, civilian-clad detectives, or we call them plainclothes detectives, make up the second wave in crime control efforts. Most city police departments of any size have detective units, distinct from but in close working relationships with the patrol force. In specialized instances like the FBI and similar government agencies that have no routine patrol functions, both frontline officers and most of their supervisors or superiors are detectives. In general, detectives occupy a higher status and enjoy more prestige than, let's say, uniformed officers. And that occurs both within and outside the police department. The detectives generally occupy a higher status and they enjoy a little bit more prestige They are mostly veteran officers. They've been around for a while. They've all worked the streets before. They've been selected because they're probably better investigators. They follow up on cases better. They've been promoted to the rank of detective. It's usually just one step above a patrolman's rank, and it's not to TV tends to reflect them as high ranking, but they're generally not high ranking. They don't generally occupy a higher rank than a patrol officer. Maybe a next step above. A detective is simply someone who's in a special investigating unit. Typically in large departments, patrol officers have different ranks. They go from a rookie and then they go through various grades to sergeant, lieutenant, captain, and so forth. And they are under the command of a police chief. In terms of functions, working conditions, and privileges and prestige, becoming a detective at any rank is ordinarily considered a promotion. Most often detectives have a better work schedule. A lot of them work day shifts. They have a scattered skeleton crew at night. Mostly a Monday through Friday job, unless they are specifically put on call status on the weekend, or there's a particular police department has a weekend shift. Everything depends on the size of the department, whether it's a small town detective or a larger city detective. Typically, the detective schedule is a much better schedule, and most often they have a lot more weekends off or holidays off than a patrol officer. Detectives are distributed within police organizations in a variety of ways, depending on the administrative preference of the top police officials. In some police departments, especially smaller ones, it is customary to have generalists, what we call generalist detectives. These detectives are assigned to perform a wide range of investigative duties, primarily follow-up investigations of cases originated by the patrol officers. If a city is large enough this and presents sufficiently complex enforcement problems, specialized detective units are formed. You could have detective units assigned to the intelligence unit, the vice squad. Vice would be investigating things like drugs or prostitution, gambling, and so forth. You could have a homicide squad where they just investigate murders and suspicious deaths. In a large city, you could have a robbery squad of detectives who just specialize in robberies. These are crime-specific squads that are distributed throughout the detective division and housed in decentralized offices. Again, larger cities, New York City, Boston, you have these large detective divisions, as compared to smaller populations where the detective is known more as a generalist. There's not enough crime to have specialized units, so detectives are assigned to a variety of cases, child abuse, homicides, sexual assaults, and so forth. Of all police activities, that of the detective has been the most romanticized, to the point where common notions about detective work have almost nothing to do with reality. Written and televised nonsense has created a mystique about police detectives, which sometimes affects the detective's own behavior and it obscures their real role. TV has really glamorized detectives. Much more detective shows out there than there are patrol type shows. As detectives are concerned, an investigator's time is largely consumed reviewing reports, documenting files, and attempting to locate and interview victims in cases that experience indicates will never be solved. Furthermore, even for cases which are solved, that is, where a suspect is identified, a detective spends much more time in post-clearance processing than actually determining the perpetrator. So we have, for example, we have a murder. Let's say a murder, a domestic violence murder. Husband kills the wife. Neighbors call. Police arrive. Husband is still at the scene. You've already determined who the perpetrator is. But a lot of times, even though you determine who the perpetrator is, you'll spend time collecting evidence to show that this particular perpetrator did the crime. You'll also spend a lot of time in post-clearance processing, which means that you'll have gathered the evidence, you will have written reports about the investigation you did, you will have had meetings with the district attorney, your supervisors, to see if there's more work that needs to be done. You'll have made an arrest, you will have fingerprinted the suspect, you will have done some interviewing with the suspect. Even though you've already determined who the suspect is and made an arrest, there's a lot of work to be done afterwards, getting ready for trial, talking to witnesses, preparing witnesses for court, and so on. So a lot of time is spent in post-clearance processing, which is the clearing of the scene and then the work that goes on afterwards. There's a lot of work that goes on afterwards. Juries expect physical evidence to convict suspects, and so there's a need to find physical evidence as well as a need to make sure that you have collected all the information. The public in general and criminal juries in particular expect detectives to employ elaborate scientific investigative devices like fingerprints, DNA, lie detectors, ballistics reports, and spectrographic analysis of physical evidence. Spectrographic analysis is putting samples of evidence through different scientific machines to analyze things like texture of paint, texture of fibers, hair, things of that nature. Latent fingerprints, voice patterns, bloodstain analysis, and the like are rarely provided as a basis for identifying a suspect. TV glamorizes this, but you don't always identify a suspect by physical evidence, even though juries expect it. Juries are often reluctant to convict suspects in cases where there are no fingerprints or other bits of hard scientific evidence. And crime victims are often cheated if a detective fails to look for physical clues. Looking at this slide, detective functions, basically, they come from uniform ranks after experiencing the streets for a while. What I mean by experiencing the streets, they've been on a patrol. They've been shown to be able to relate to people, to talk to people. They have great investigative skills. They follow up on some of their calls to get their man, so to speak. They come from experienced veteran police officers. Unlike the federal law enforcement ranks, where an FBI agent is simply a college graduate who has probably a degree in psychology or degree in forensics, has a master's degree, and gets hired because they have people skills, but not necessarily, they have not really experienced the streets. Your best FBI agents are agents that have been hired from local or state law enforcement agencies, county, who have had some experience investigating cases for a while. Again, in summary, detectives may be assigned to special investigative units. Again, a homicide unit, robbery unit, child abuse unit. That happens in large cities. In summary, detectives are wrongly portrayed as high-ranking by TV. They're not. You can be, as I've experienced. I went from a trooper on the road to a detective, and then I became a sergeant detective, and then I became a lieutenant detective, meaning that there are ranks within the detective division, but your typical detective out on the street is not much higher than a patrol rank. And detectives usually do long, tedious investigations followed by much longer hours of report writing. You don't see that part on TV. Tedious investigations. You could work a case for many weeks, gathering information, and not resolve it. Not all crimes are solvable. Crimes reported. Again, not all calls are reports of a crime. I put in parentheses here, duck flies in large window and breaks it. I remember as a trooper, I was called to a camp break. This is a cottage on a nearby lake. I responded to the call, and the owner was standing in his camp, which was it was a seasonal camp, meaning that he did not live there year round. He just went there in the summertime, and when he went to visit his cottage one day, he noticed that the large window overlooking the lake was broken, and wanted to report a camp break to me. I took a report from the man, then I went outside to inspect the outside damage to the window, and there I found a dead duck laying on the ground below the window. What happened was a duck was trying to fly off the lake and saw light, shiny light through the trees, the reflection of the sun on the glass, headed for that opening, and flew right into a window, thinking that was a clear opening to get out of the trees, and broke its neck and died. Is that a crime? No. No, there was no intent on the duck to break the window. The duck is deceased. No charges were pressed. But in all seriousness, not all crimes reported are actually crimes. Police often respond to what we call annoyance calls. These are calls that may be repeated calls to family disturbances. The family one family may be quarreling. There may be some quarreling going on amongst family members, some arguing and so forth. Neighbor may have called because they were afraid that someone was being assaulted or whatever, or they were being extra loud, and there was a disturbance there. Maybe a loud music complaint where we asked the owner to turn the music down. It's not a crime until Usually in a loud music complaint or barking dog complaint, it's not a crime until they after you warn them to turn the music down or to take care of the noise. If they continue to not do that, then they can be charged with a crime. Oftentimes, police will get a call of a suspicious person in the neighborhood. Someone just walking around doesn't belong in the neighborhood. Police will arrive and check it out. Police are often called to barking dog complaint. Again, barking dog complaints are annoyance call because there are specific ordinances or statutes pertaining to dogs barking. If the dog is if it's during regular normal daylight hours and the dog is not keeping anybody from sleeping, then there's not a lot that police can do except to warn the owner that they need to control their dog. And unless you can enforce a statute where this barking dog is preventing somebody who's working the night shift from sleeping next door, or there's a bedridden ill person next door who cannot sleep, then you could charge the owner with disorderly conduct if there's no specific ordinance for a barking dog. Of course, patrol patterns are broken when unusual circumstances are observed and must be investigated. When suspicious characters are stopped for questioning, and when calls for assistance are received. The motorized patrol officer is constantly within radio range of a police dispatcher, and in fact, the dispatcher-patrol officer relationship is very critical to policing. Most or often the information communicated to patrol officers is brief to the point of being cryptic. The dispatcher will just say investigate family trouble, give an address, and so forth, or say prowler on the roof, give an address, or see the man at a certain location to investigate burglary, and so forth. Very brief message given over the radio. And in today's day and age, where most agencies have computer terminals in the cars, the complaint will be given by way of wireless communication to the patrol officer. People who have police scanners will often find that the scanners are quite quiet in modern age because the complaint or the incident that the patrol officer must respond to is given out in a wireless fashion to the computer in the patrol car, not necessarily by radio. You may hear some brief conversations between the dispatcher and the patrol officer, but a lot of times the complaint is sent in a report format or by way of email and transmitted to the computer. There may be a brief confirmation by the patrol officer, a verbal confirmation that he got the complaint and is en route to the complaint. But other than that, conversations over the radio are very brief. A lot of the conversations can also, rather than type the whole complaint out, the dispatcher may call on the radio and ask the patrol officer to call them. Most patrol officers have cell phones, and they'll receive the complaint over a cell phone. The calls given to the patrol officer by the dispatcher are sometimes quite urgent, and the dispatcher will give some indication of the danger, such as there's a man with a gun type complaint, or there are shots fired, or there's a robbery in progress. The one message that most likely will elicit the most rapid response is officer in trouble type complaint, or officer down, where a dispatcher is sending another officer to back up an officer that is in trouble or has been shot, and those are very urgent. The dispatcher will often use a lot of discretion in deciding whether to send a car on a call at all. And if they do send a car, whether to assign a degree of urgency to the call. In return, the patrol officer who receives the call must decide whether to respond and in what manner. Do I respond with blue lights and siren? Do I just drive a little bit above the speed limit to get there? How much urgency do I put in my response time? In some dispatch situations, the patrol officer responds in an urgent manner, driving rapidly to the scene, often using the blue lights and siren. In other instances, they respond in a routine manner, observing all the traffic rules and laws on the way to the scene. And they even look for a parking space when they get there. Again, depends on the urgency of the call. If someone reports that their house was broken into some time ago while they were on vacation, then there's no urgency to respond to that call. It's not a burglary in progress. Same with someone calling and reporting their mailbox got smashed the night before. That's not an urgent call. Or there's an accident that has occurred in a parking lot somewhere where there was minor damage and there's no injury. There's no need to respond to that with siren and blue lights. Siren and blue lights, they typically just warn the public that there's an emergency occurring. They're requesting the public give them a clear road so they can get there quicker. They also allow the police officer to go through red lights or stop signs just to slow down and not come to a complete stop. It's a privilege. You're requesting assistance from the public, but it's a request, and not necessarily does it grant the officer full immunity to go through a red light and cause an accident. It allows them to go through a red light, but to proceed cautiously through that light. In summary, officers are dispatched to crimes, public safety calls, and so on, assaults, threats, public hazards. The patrol officer relationship with the dispatcher is critical. Upon arrival, the major concern of the officer upon arrival, their duty upon arrival, is to, first of all, determine if there's any injured parties and to care for those injured. After that, if we are responding to a crime scene, the crime scene security is the next important step, to make sure that you are not contaminating the crime scene, that others are not contaminating the crime scene, and you are securing the scene so no evidence gets destroyed. And that's how you typically see a yellow police line, a crime scene do not cross type of tape circling an area where a crime has occurred, so that people know that they're not allowed to go beyond the tape and destroy evidence. Any persons already inside the crime scene are removed, and then the officer goes about gathering information about what has occurred. I'll talk more about duties of police officers at crime scenes in later lectures. But for now, I'd like to talk about becoming a police officer. Who becomes a police officer? Well, you have your different types of people become police officers. They become police officers for different reasons. You have your historical types, family tradition. Their father was a cop, or their grandfather was a cop. They have uncles or brothers that are cops, sisters. It's a family tradition that you go into law enforcement. Then you have your do-gooder types. These are the people who, I just want to care for people and make the world safe type people. They've had good, productive lives. They've not done anything wrong. They've not committed crimes themselves. They've not used drugs. They just want to be nice to people, take care of them, make the world safe, do wonderful things for people. I call these do-gooder types. They just want to make the world better. And then you have your John Wayne types that join the police force. These are the scary ones. The John Wayne types, those of you who not familiar with John Wayne was a Western hero. He was a cowboy who played many roles as a sheriff in different Western movies. He was always, the guy that stood for, he was never a bad guy. He was always portrayed as a good guy in the Westerns. And but the John Wayne types, he would use his fists. He would shoot a lot of people. He was a big guy who really kicked butt. And these types of people, they just want to be given a gun and a badge and then want to go out and kick some butt. These are your John Wayne types, and a lot of officers suffer from what is classified as the John Wayne syndrome. They become so enthralled in their police job that it means everything to them. The police brotherhood is all that matters, and from the time that they graduate from the police academy, that first year or two, a lot of rookie police officers suffer from this type of syndrome. The police job is their whole world. They live and breathe the streets. They just want to work all the time, to the point where their families may suffer. They work as many hours as they can, and they slowly burn out in their first year because they don't get enough free time. They don't get enough family time. The fellow officers on the police department become their brothers and sisters rather than their own immediate family. This is classified as the John Wayne syndrome, and most officers, it lasts maybe a year or two. Some officers never experience it. Those that do, usually the syndrome wears off after a year or two, and they settle down and realize that it may be just another job. It may be an important job, but it's not your whole life. Those of you who are curious about how people do join the police force, or you may have an interest in becoming a police officer yourselves, how do you apply? Well, like most jobs, sometimes, in most police jobs, you do have to fill out a written application, like you do for most jobs. Once the written application is submitted, you're scheduled for a written test, as in most government jobs. And upon passing the written test, if your intent is to be a police officer, then the agency you're applying to will have a specific physical fitness test that you must pass before you proceed on to the next level in the application process. The typical physical fitness test, the applicant is required to possibly run a mile and a half in under 12 minutes, required to do so many push-ups in so many minutes, so many sit-ups, stretch tests, and things of that nature. The tests aren't easy, particularly for someone who's in the early 20s. There are different levels of the physical fitness test according to your age. The American Civil Liberties has gotten into making the hiring process fair for everyone. So just because you're 40 years old and you're competing against a 22-year-old, it doesn't mean that the 22-year-old will be hired before the 40-year-old. And it doesn't mean you're not going to pass the physical fitness test, because most of these physical fitness tests are broken up into different brackets, where the 22 to 29-year-olds will have a much more difficult test to go through, shorter amount of time to do the mile and a half. You have to do more sit-ups in the same amount of time, and so they're fundamentally fair to everybody. And then there's a classification for females. A 22-year-old female does not have to do the same amount of physical aptitude that a male would have to do. Once you pass the physical fitness test, then you move on to the oral board part of the application process. Typically, the oral board is designed so that the board members will get their first look at an applicant as to how well he communicates, how well he or she answers questions under stressful conditions. And the answers, some may be related to responding to certain police situations. Some of the questions may be, to see how someone would respond to a typical police situation, and how a person would process that situation, and what they would do, how they would think their way through it. Again, the oral board is designed to see the person's communication skills, the way he presents himself or herself, how they dress. Are they covered with tattoos, and are they covered with piercings all over their body? Do they present do they have a command presence? Do they present an acceptable appearance if they were placed into a uniform position? Once an applicant passes the oral board, then they move on to background investigation. This is where an investigator looks into your financial background, looks into any past criminal record, the possibility of drug abuse, thefts, embezzlements. Talk to your landlord. How well do you meet your financial obligations? Whether you pay your rent on time. Investigate your credit card debt. As a police officer, you need to have a good financial foundation. You cannot be owing a lot of money to people who might expect favors if they allow you to pay your payments late or not make payments at all. If you pass that phase of the application process, then you move on to the polygraph exam. Again, the background investigation may provide questions to the polygraph examiner, certain areas that need to be looked into. But the polygraph exam is usually a general questionnaire format where each applicant is asked a variety of questions dealing with their whether they've had a criminal background, they've committed undetected crimes. They may question whether there's been allegations of abuse anywhere, whether it be domestic violence or sexual abuse, the use of drugs, and so forth. Once a person passes the polygraph exam, you simply pass an exam by telling the truth. The information gotten from the exam may be problematic to the applicant, and after that, a review board reviews the findings of all the different phases that have occurred before in the application process. The review board will look at the answers on the polygraph exam, any particular problems found in the background investigation, and a review board makes a decision as to whether or not this applicant will continue on in the application process or stop right there. An applicant can fail any of these different steps in the application process. Once you fail one step, you're eliminated from the process. You do not move on. Applicant testing is expensive for an agency, and they will, if you fail any part of the process, you're eliminated. Those that continue to pass move on to the next level. And in most agencies nowadays, they require a person to have a psychological screening where the applicant meets with a psychologist, and they run through a battery of questions and tests to see the makeup of this person. And once the psychologist makes a favorable recommendation that this person is capable of conducting or being a police officer, then the applicant goes on to the final stage, which is the chief's interview. The chief of the agency interviews all applicants, and the chief will give a thumbs up or thumbs down as to whether the person will continue on to the police academy. A police officer's job is very stressful. It's very unusual. Police officers are exposed to a variety of different situations that are very traumatic, very stressful, dangerous, and we certainly want the best applicant out there that will be able to size up the situation, make the right decisions, work well under stress, and be able to adjust to any situation. And that's the importance of the psychological screening. How stable, how secure is this person? Do they have a high self-esteem rather than a low self-esteem? Are they going into police work for the right reasons? Are they just fascinated with guns, fast cars, and a badge? Or do they truly want to make a difference by helping people who are victims of crime? And the chief's interview, again, it's all left up to the chief whether or not the person goes to the academy or not. The chief you may have passed everything up to that point, but if you go in to meet with the chief and you have a cocky attitude, you do not present yourself well, you have a soft handshake, your overall demeanor is not acceptable to the chief, he may say, no, I don't want you. I don't want you working for me. So that's a brief summary of the application process. Process of hiring. What in the chief's interview that I just mentioned, what is the employer, meaning the police agency, actually looking for? Well, the most important things is that you have integrity, you're honest, you're intelligent, you're respectful, uh, and the employer is also looking at experience. What is your maturity level? What experiences have you had in the workforce? What is your work ethic? Are you a hard worker? Uh, how many jobs did you have prior to getting to that interview with the chief of police? What are your life experiences? Uh, I tell many students that just because you graduated from high school, uh, first of all, you cannot apply to a police agency until you're 21 years old, or you cannot be hired. Excuse me, cannot be hired until you're 21 years old. So the experiences you have had prior to reaching age 21, those are very important. Did you have a part-time job in high school? Did you, how mature are you? Maturity comes with age. We expect that 25-year-olds are more mature than a 21-year-old, and a 21-year-old is more mature than a high school senior. So as an employer, as a chief of police, we look at all these things. You do not need a college diploma to get a job in most on most departments. They'll accept a high school diploma, but what you do from the time you're in high school until you apply for a police job is very important. What did you do with yourself? Were you a productive citizen? Where did you work? Did you choose to go into the military and serve your country? Or after graduating from high school, did you go to college and help to prepare yourself for a career in law enforcement by taking criminal justice courses? And even if you did graduate with a criminal justice degree, whether it's 2-year or a public safety degree, a 4-year degree, even if you did, it does not guarantee you a job as a police officer. Again, as a chief of police, if they can hire someone that has already had work experience as a police officer with another agency, or they can hire someone who's had life experiences where they were able to live by themselves rather than live with mom and dad. They were able to work a job and pay their bills, maybe work 1 or 2 jobs rather than a variety of jobs where they never stayed more than 6 months. A police chief is looking for someone who, when they begin the work of a police officer, they're going to stay and make it a career, not just stay 6 months. So these life experiences are important. What you do with yourself in college, what you do after college. I would highly recommend a college degree. I would highly recommend, if not a college degree, a military background, if not both. These are things that are going to make you more marketable as an applicant for a police department. If you're a kid and you act like a kid, your chances of being successful are not going to be very good. Police chiefs look for maturity. Not to say that they don't hire 22-year-olds, 21-year-olds, but your age is still working against you. You need to show, if you can't show maturity by your age, at least show it through your background. Having a command presence when you walk into an interview, being self-confident, have good self-esteem, showing an independence, that you're independent, you're a productive citizen, you've moved out of your parents' house, you've gotten a job, you're making a mortgage payment, or you're making a car payment, you're not in debt to the extent where you can't make your payments. That's all part of maturity, and very very appropriate, and it really increases your chances of success in being hired. If you are hired, then the next thing that needs to occur is for you to go to a police academy. Now, police academy training, you have a basic academy, which typically is around 18 weeks, where you will be training along with officers from other agencies. You may have been hired by a particular police agency, but in smaller towns and cities in a particular state, all officers go to the same academy. In larger cities like New York City or Boston, their academy may be just their city police department, because they're large enough to have a continuous academy at all times. In states with a smaller population, the state runs a police academy, and they train officers from different levels of law enforcement. They all go to a basic school, and then depending on the agency that they're working for, most county municipal police agencies, their officers are trained at the basic academy and then go right to work with a training officer. On the state level, whether it be state police, game wardens, Marine Patrol, the law enforcement officer goes through a basic academy, and then that is followed up by what we call a post school, where they get more specialized training in the areas that they'll be enforcing. A typical state trooper position or game warden position, they'll go through 18 weeks of academy training, and then go to another 8 or 9 weeks of specialized post school. Why? Well, those agencies have jurisdictions that go beyond what local and county jurisdictions do. With the state police, they have a specialized report writing procedure that they're trained under. They enforce commercial vehicle laws. They investigate homicides. They're refreshed. They're made aware of a lot of different enforcement actions that they will be taking. They're trained, and because troopers ride alone, they're trained on how to handle situations alone, whereas a city police or county police agency may have a couple of officers in the car. On the state level, troopers ride alone and are expected to handle situations alone, and the additional training helps them do that. They're trained in specialized equipment, and they're trained on policies and procedures with the agency, things that are not offered at the basic academy. Do local county police agencies get this same training? They do, but their training is done back at the local level, rather than have a post school which costs a lot of money. The purpose of the academy, well, besides training police officers to learn how to besides training them in defense tactics and shooting techniques and driving techniques, the purpose of the academy is to also uh, teach them in the motor vehicle laws, teach them criminal laws, uh, teach them what certain laws need to be enforced, and it puts them into the training puts them into various situations where uh, stress is placed upon them. They learn how to work with other agencies. They learn how to work as a team. They are placed in stressful positions to see how they react. They're yelled at a lot, and they're tested beyond their limits as to their physical limits or their mental capacities as far as how much you're shown how much you can accomplish, how much you can achieve. You're tested on the classroom training. You're tested on how you interview, how you interact with people, and you're trained so that you can graduate from the academy and hit the streets the next day. That's the purpose of the academy, to put that mindset into the recruits that they're able to achieve all these things. The academy content includes a lot of different things. I've mentioned criminal law, motor vehicle law. They're also trained in recruits are also trained in constitutional law, first aid. I mentioned self-defense, firearms training, pursuit driving. They're trained in crisis intervention, report writing, courtroom testimony, traffic control, traffic accident investigation, riot control. There's training involved in community relations, training on fingerprinting, arrest techniques, search and seizure, rules of evidence. These are just some of the courses offered during the basic police academy. I'd like to talk now about women and minorities in policing. As you please read with me here, minorities, men in particular, broke the hiring barrier in police work much before women did. Hiring of minorities came about as a result of special interest groups encouraging leaders to hire from the community. American Civil Liberties Union, NAACP, all put pressure on leaders to hire from within the community, because the community it means people living there who you may have many minorities, not just white Caucasian Americans, but minorities from different countries. You have blacks, Hispanics, Asians, and there was pressure that if you're going to police a community, then you should draw from that community to do that policing. It makes sense that if you have a Chinese presence in a community, or you have a Korean presence or a Hispanic presence, that it would make sense that that area of the city or that community would have a particular officer from that ethnic group. Traditionally, the police profession has been dominated by the white male police officer. Changing times require changes in hiring. In 1972, there was an amendment to the Civil Rights Act which guaranteed women equal protection to policing careers. Although women today continue to make great strides in policing, and I put here the first woman police chief was Beverly Harvard of Atlanta in 1994, and that was again the first woman police chief of a major city. Even though that occurred, women continue to be a minority in policing. Women still make up only about 10% of most police agencies, meaning that if you have a workforce of 10 officers, you probably have one woman. That's where the 10% comes in. That's the national average. For much of our history, again, police work has been dominated by men. Prior to the 1970s, selection criteria for women and men who entered police work were different. And after they were hired, women were assigned to specialized jobs such as juvenile and children's crimes, certain women's crimes, and of course, traffic duty, as a safety officer in school zones and so on. With the passage of the 1972 Amendment to the Civil Rights Act, however, women were granted equal employment opportunities in policing. Women had until recent years, women had a tougher time accessing police careers because of the physical fitness tests, and then also there were demands that to be a police officer you had to be a proportional height and weight, and then certainly have certain physical requirements. But still, in the police world today, it's still dominated by men. Research in this area has demonstrated that women have performed admirably in traditional police roles. And with that successful job performance has come an increasing rate of promotions within police departments. Studies have also shown that not all women remain in police work after they've been hired. Women have a slightly higher rate of job turnover in policing than men do. And a possible reason for this is that for some women, police work continues to be a hostile and unpleasant environment. They're berated by their fellow officers who are men. Although both men and women find that changing shifts in many police departments does cause hardships on family life. This is certainly more difficult for women who are single parents or pregnant. Women bear children and have always been recognized as the primary caregiver in a family, and it's pretty tough for a mother to be a police officer and be expected to nurture children. Most women who are successful in police work are usually single, have no children, are independent, possibly unmarried. They seem to fare better than those who are mothers and have a family. It's unfair, but that is how the job operates, and the turnover of women in police work is like I said, slightly higher than a man, but it's still higher, and there are many reasons for that. In closing, I'd like to direct your attention once again, if you haven't read it already, to the handout, What is a Cop? Although I've already mentioned different types of people who become police officers, your do-gooders, your John Wayne types, whatever category you may want to place a certain police officer that you may know, just know that most police officers are common, ordinary citizens. It could be your next door neighbor, it could be your brother-in-law, it could be a guy you went to, or gal that you went to high school with or college with. They're ordinary, everyday citizens who want to get into a profession because they think that the laws in this country are important. They think that protecting your neighbors' lives and property are important. Whatever a police officer does may not always be popular with everyone. And of course, everyone will always try to second guess what you did, or everybody has a better idea of what a police officer should do. Even though they haven't been to the academy, they haven't received any training in police procedures or enforcing criminal or motor vehicle law or civil law. Everyone seems to have a better idea of what police should be doing out there. Everyone has an opinion. Read the handout, form your own opinion about police. But just know that they are everyday citizens. They may have been above average in high school as far as grades or how they conducted themselves in preparing for a career, meaning that they stayed away from doing bad things like drugs, any criminal activity. They may have been the quiet kid who did not always take the lead in getting into trouble because they fully believe that they needed to do the right thing. Have a good day.